Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So I'm going to be going through all of the books that I've read in the last 2 months. I have to be honest with you, it's not been a lot. I have had family stay with me for the whole month of August and I thought that I was going to read a lot. I usually like to read in the summertime, be outside in the sun. We were just too busy, too distracted, and I just could not get into books. I do have books here from the month of July as well because I did not do a catch-up. However, a lot of the books in July that I read I did have in a vlog. So yeah, I've got no vlogs for this month or anything like that, but I will try to get back into my filming schedule. I've just been totally off with this channel and my other main channel. I have not been filming at all recently. So anyway, let's get into all the books that I have read. And I have actually one DNF. So really it's a very small list. Alright, so we'll start with this one. This was a pretty hefty book. So it is House of Earth and Blood by Sarah J. Maas. I did have a blog on this. I don't know if there's too much to say about this other than the fact that I felt like it was far too long for what it was. It's the first book of a new series and it's like 600-700 pages, something crazy like that. I feel like you could have halved this book and just have maybe a 300-page book and keep a lot of the elements obviously in the story, because I think there's some interesting aspects in the world, but it was just so long and so tedious. And I have to say, I feel like it put me a little bit in a reading slump because it did take me several weeks to read this. I also started reading this right before I got super sick. I ended up getting the flu back in July. I got sunstroke and then I got the flu. So I didn't have much luck in the beginning of July. And this is when I started reading it. So yeah, I read it, but I gave it 2 stars. I just thought it was so dull and tedious and I did not have a good experience. And I do have the second book. I don't have the third book. I don't think I'm gonna buy the third book because I've heard bad things about the third book. And so anyway, whatever. I think I'll try to read the second book at some point, but if I start reading it now, it's gonna definitely put me in another reading slump. So I have to build up to it because I don't know, I liked ACOTAR the first couple books, or like maybe the first 3 books. I liked that series. And Throne of Glass, same thing. I kind of liked a few of the books and I appreciated what the story was trying to do and everything. But I don't really like this one. This one has a different feel to it, and maybe because it's urban, you know, it's like set in modern time, but it has all of these I don't know, what's his face? I can't even remember anybody's names. This is like, I read this like 2 years ago. It feels like you got Bryce and you have Hunt. And Hunt is a fallen angel and he has angel wings and all this. I don't know, it's just, there's just too much going on. And then they whip out their cell phones. It's just like, it just didn't seem to make any sense. So I read it, but I gave it 2 stars. All right, next book that I read was A Fate Inked in Blood by Danielle L. Jensen. I actually really like this. I've seen mixed reviews. I've seen people DNF this book and I've seen people not really enjoy it or just feel like it's mediocre. I gave it a 4 star. I actually enjoyed this book, and reading it right after reading this book might have made my enjoyment a little bit higher because it was a completely different type of fantasy book. It's set in like the Viking age, so Viking mythology, and it was just a little bit more interesting. So it's about, what's her name? Freya, and she is this sort of shield maiden, and she's basically been prophesized to, you know, bring peace to the lands and everything like that. And she's got this gift and everything. Obviously there is a romance in this book. I did talk about it a little bit in a vlog, so if you want to see that. My memory of this book is so bad at this point. Again, it's like another book where I read this in July and now I don't remember all of the minor details, but I actually kind of like the romance. It was a little bit of a slower build, but you kind of knew straight away that they were going to get together. There is a twist to it. Whether you see it coming or not, it doesn't really matter, but there is like something that happens right at the end of the book which, you know, will tie in with a sequel. So I actually do want to read the sequel. It hasn't even been written, or I don't even know when it will be released, but I will find it very interesting to see where that goes, because I think I kind of liked that something happened at the end. I was kind of hoping that something different would happen, because otherwise it did get a little bit boring at the end and a little bit more like, I don't know, too lovey-dovey. So you were kind of hoping for something to change, and it did. But I liked it, so I gave it 4 stars. I can see why people would find it a little bit dull and boring if they're not into more of a slower build, but I like slower builds, so I liked it. Alright, and then I read a contemporary book, so I read Cleopatra and Frankenstein by Coco Mellers. So this one was, I don't know, I've had a lot of time now to think about this book. I feel like I gave it 2.5 or 3 stars. I don't actually recall. It was definitely not more than that. I probably gave it 2.5 to 3 stars. I think that's really where it sits. It is not a bad book. I wouldn't say it's a bad book, but I also found that the characters extremely annoying, but not in an in your face, but it was just frustrating to read some of their choices and what they did. And obviously you're reading about a relationship that's basically falling apart. Like they have a really cute meet cute at the beginning of the book, and actually going into it, I thought, oh, this is going to be a nice cute little romance. Because the back doesn't really tell you, it just tells you that, you know, they meet, they fall in love, and then their lives and their friends change forever, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, you do get a lot of perspectives. You get perspectives of people who I don't think you need. You know, you get perspective of of Cleo's best friend. You get perspective of Frank's sister, and I feel like they're definitely secondary or third sort of characters in the book, and you get perspectives from them and little snippets of their life and stories of their life, and I don't really get the purpose of that. I think if it centered more around the relationship of Frank and Cleo and the falling apart of that, it would have been fine. I also have read some reviews of people really enjoying another person's perspective, which I don't want to spoil who that is. But I found her to, like, I liked those chapters too. Those are the only chapters that are in first person, which was kind of interesting and a little jarring at first. I did enjoy reading those. However, I did not like Frank's redemption arc, if you can call it that. Like, I mean, if you've read the book, you kind of can know what I mean, but I didn't like that he even had one. To be fair, I don't think he deserved it, so maybe a little spoiler there. But I also didn't really feel too much towards Cleo. It was really hard to, you know, root for her in any way, because I think purposely she's so closed off to everyone in her world and her life and her friends, and also to the reader, and it's definitely on purpose. But having said that, you know, it's kind of hard to root for anyone in this book because they're all so unlikable. So anyway, I don't know who I would recommend this to. I don't think I could recommend this book to anyone, but if you have it on your physical TBR and you're wondering if you should read it, just read it. It's not too hard to read. Just get through it, and maybe you'll read like 30 pages and DNF it. I don't think it's a book worth holding on to and waiting for that perfect moment to read it, because it's not a feel-good book. So, and it's also not a book, I mean, I've read reviews where people cried at this book. No, it is not sad at all. Somebody said it was like the saddest book they've ever read. They obviously haven't read like other books, because it's not the saddest book at all. Because you cannot feel for these people. It is just more infuriating and frustrating, and you know, there's moments in the book where I did enjoy it, but then the character just lets you down, or there's moments where I really did not like what happened. And again, I don't want to give spoilers, so whatever. I don't think it's a book worth holding on to. If you have not bought it and you're curious about reading it, I don't think I would recommend it to anyone. But having said that, I do give it a 2.5 to 3 stars. It's not like awful, it's not the worst book I've read, but I also don't think it brought anything to my life by reading it. Alright, and then the only book that I have DNF'd in the last couple months is Goddess of the River by Vaishnavi Patel. So I did not know anything about this book going into it. It is about, you know, I guess, you know, Eastern mythology, and I don't know anything about that at all. I think it's there's a lot of sort of, I think the world, like, I think the story of Ganga is a very well-known story, but just not to me. So I'm not the best person to even tell you what this book is about. I've read about, I think, 200 pages or so. No, I read 116 pages. I got to part 2. So I read part 1 of the book. I don't know if there's just part 2 or part 3. And you follow Ganga, who is basically the goddess of the river, as in the name. She's been banished to Earth. She is a god, and she was banished to Earth. She's been there for centuries, I want to say, just watching Earth go by and watching like the spirits, and then she suddenly sees humans and everything and sees the impact of what they have on nature and her river. And then she becomes mortal for a while, and in order to free herself and these other beings that she has grown fond of, I can't remember what they're called, but they're like spirits or something, that have been with her in the river. She needs to basically give birth to like 7 babies and things like that. And that's kind of where I'm going to stop it, because that's kind of, you know, I obviously have read past that a little bit, but that's like the first part of the book. And there is a trigger warning. There is, because when I read it, I was reading this in a vlog and I was like, they should put a trigger warning. I was so angry and mad, but actually there is a trigger warning in the book. I just didn't read it, and that is on me. So yeah, there's a content warning, and you should absolutely read this if you have any triggers for birth and little children and anything that you can think of around that, which I do have triggers for that. So I should definitely have read the content warning, but sometimes I feel like when you read the content warning, it kind of gives you a little bit of a spoiler of what's ahead. And so I don't read them. Like most of the times I don't read them, but I really should have read them for this book. So that is on me, and I definitely will peep at them next time, just so I don't fall into the same mistake. But yeah, it was really kind of upsetting to read a bunch of these chapters, and I really didn't understand how people could love this book after reading those chapters. But obviously if they don't have those triggers inside of them, then it's just reading a book. And maybe if you know the story, you know the story. That's as much as I'm going to say. I would definitely, I gave it a 1 star, unfortunately, because of that. And I felt so like sick to my stomach about what was happening. So anyway, I would not recommend this book to anyone, but I'm sure the rest of the book is sweet and lovely. I actually also didn't really like the writing style. I read that some people like the writing style. I did not enjoy the writing style. I thought it was very wishy-washy, and, you know, it just wasn't my cup of tea. So regardless of that, I was already kind of feeling a little bit detached from the book, and also the fact that I had no idea what I was going into. It just I felt really blind to it, and then that happened and I was just like, no. So yeah, got to part 2 and I was like, I'm not reading any more of this. Okay, moving on. I did read the 2nd book of the All Souls trilogy by Deborah Harkness, The Shadow of Night. I wish I hadn't read this. Another big chunky book. And it's kind of like Sarah J Maas in terms of, like, let's just make a really big book, fill it with nonsense, and be done with it. I think I gave this 1 star. I think 1 or 2 stars. I think it's a 1 star for sure. So if I gave it 2 stars, I think I'm going to lower my rating, because it is a nonsense book. It's like pointless. Nothing happens in this book. You just... The first book was such a struggle. It put me in a reading slump, but I still gave it 3 stars because I liked the thought of what was going to happen, because you know that you're going to end up going in the past because suddenly there's time travel, right? So in this book, you start straight off in the past. It leads off right after the first book, and there's just so many characters in this book. It's really hard to follow, and also you don't really need to follow it, because I skim read this book like crazy, and I would miss, I'm not gonna lie, I would like skim read like 10 pages, see what's going on, and nothing would have changed. It had been all dialogue. All they do is talk nonsense in this book. It's so obnoxious, it's so pretentious. I can't tell you how, she wanted to add all of these, like she added Shakespeare in here. She added all of these philosophers, these writers from the English, like, is it Elizabeth age, whatever. It was just so boring, and it did not feel like the first book at all. And also the romance between the two characters just did not feel real. I actually hated Matthew at the end. I really did not like him in this book. So even when they had like their little romance parts in the story, I was just so detached from it. I could not care less, because I found him to be really rude in this book, and he held back so many things. And he just didn't tell, I can't even remember their names, Diana. He didn't tell Diana so much about his old life, and then she's like learning about everything as we go. And I would have been so mad at him, but she just takes it with a pinch. Like, she doesn't care that he's been lying to her. She doesn't care that he hasn't told her so much about his life, because she loves him. Blah, 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 blah. Oh, and then they get married again. And also you meet his father, who is a vampire. Obviously he's a vampire because he's a vampire, but he's like the vampire king, whatever. And then you find out that Matthew is also an English spy. And also you find out something else about him, but I couldn't tell you. I couldn't care less. It was very boring. There's so many parts about Diana trying to learn how to speak English the proper way, because obviously the way she speaks English is the modern way, and finding clothes for her to wear so she doesn't stand out. And boy, do I not care. I don't care. It was so dull. It was so dull. I do have the rest of the series. I don't have the brand new book that I think just released this year, but I do have 2 more books in the series, because I bought the whole series without reading any of it. So I'm not looking forward to reading the next couple books, I have to say, because I really don't care. I think this is definitely the worst book I've read this year, just with the amount of sheer like pages there are in this book. It's 600 pages. I think it could have been a novella. I think they could have done 100 pages, pushed it all into a little novella, like a little, like, you know, here's what happened in the past, and then we jump right back into the modern life. Because I tell you what, nothing happens in this book. So if you have this on your physical TBR, if you're wondering about starting a series, please don't. I don't think it's worth it. Don't do what I've done. Don't waste your money. So yeah, I read that one. So you can see I've not had some very good luck with the book that I'm reading. So after reading that, I really wanted to read something quick and easy. I was not going to read this straight away because it is one of the newer books that I've just picked up, but I decided to read A Demon's Guide to Wooing a Witch. This is the second book. I don't know what the series is called, but I have A Witch's Guide to Fake Dating a Demon, which I read last year, and this is the second book by Sarah Hawley. And this is just fun. So I don't take this seriously, and I wouldn't expect anyone else to take it seriously. It's a strange book because a lot of aspects of the book could be YA, but then there are a lot of steamy parts in here where it's definitely not YA. So on the one aspect, I would say, I mean this with greatest respect. I'm not trying to put YA down, but there's a lot of immature parts in this book where it's just set for a younger audience. But then you have like the actual like steamy parts are very graphic. So yeah, there's definitely some of that, which I didn't mind. I actually kind of enjoyed that. So whatever, it is what it is. And there's no need for me to tell you what this is about. It's just a cute little romance about a demon being banished to Earth, and obviously it's like a haters to lovers as well, because they hate each other. Well, she hates him. I won't kind of like spoil like why he doesn't hate her, but yeah, it was fun. I will say the last part of the book really let it down. I was going to give it 3.5. Not quite a 4, but it was definitely a 3.5. But I think it's going to be a 2.5, and I'll just bump it up to a 3 on Goodreads, because the same thing happened in the first book. It just felt so rushed at the end, and also kind of just ridiculous. So there's that. But I do think it's a little long, so even having said that, felt like it was a little bit rushed at the end. You probably could have cut out a little bit in the middle and then made the ending a little bit better. I think that would have worked better with the pacing. But the reason I wanted to give it a 3.5 initially, just when I was really enjoying the books, because it was so cozy. I feel like this is a really cozy fantasy romance, and I didn't find the first one to be as cozy, but this one is really cozy. You have some werewolves in there too, but it's cute, and I felt coziness from this book. So if you know what I mean when you like read a book and you feel cozy and it's quite sweet. This definitely gave me that, but it fell short at the end. So, you know, kind of disappointing. But I think I'm also rating it still higher than maybe the average person, because my expectations of this wasn't super high, because I read the first book, I knew what I was getting into, like what the writing was like. But I think overall I enjoyed this book more than the first book until we got to the ending. So there's that. There is a third book about a werewolf and a vampire. And they're all part of the same universe. They're all like interconnected. Like you see the same characters, because you saw a bunch of the characters in the first book in this book, which I actually don't usually like, but in this setting I did enjoy that. So I think I will actually read the third book just to finish the series, because it's not awful. It's just a cute little cozy. It's just cozy vibes. So anyway, yeah. That's it. Those are all the books that I've read in the last 2 months. Like really not a lot, considering I definitely did not enjoy a lot of them, and then I DNF'd one of them. What I have started already is Good Bad Girl by Alice Feeney. I started this, I want to say like 3 weeks ago. I made it to page 27 and then I put it down, and I read, what was I reading at the time? I think I was reading Shadow of Night, and I just wanted to finish that one. I didn't want to have 2 books running at the same time, so I do have that one on the go. And then actually, as soon as I finished Demon's Guide, I picked up Faith and Folk by Eliza Chan, and this was only just a few days ago, and I'm on chapter 5, page 34. So not far in this book either. This has terrible reviews on Goodreads, so I'm a little bit skeptical about going into it, but it just sounds so interesting. It's about a half siren who's called Myra, and she seems to be going out with this guy, but this guy's sister gets in trouble, who's called Nami. I don't know if this is a queer book or not, because Myra is with Kai, who's the brother, but he's not mentioned at all in the blurb, so I don't know if there's something else going on. I don't even know. Who knows? But it seems to be kind of like a political book, like a obviously fantasy political book about underworld creatures being like oppressed by the people above. So I don't know. I thought that was interesting, and it's such a gorgeous book cover. So I just wanted to see, look at that, it's just stunning. So anyway, we'll see if I like it. So far, reading it, I haven't found it offensive. I found it, it's been easy to get to where I was. I've just read that in one sitting, which is not a lot, obviously just like 34 pages. But there were like 3 or 4 different perspectives already, which is kind of confusing me. So I don't really know where the story's gonna go other than what I've read in the book. So we will see. So that's everything I've been reading. Not very exciting. Hopefully I have a much better September and I can get back on track to reading. It just, summer came and I enjoyed it, and I did not have a lot to read. I didn't have a lot of time. I was just too busy. But anyway, thank you so much if you watched this far, and I will see you all next time. Bye.